Going behind the music once more with this highlight from a recent episode of Booked on Rock. Barry Greenfield back with a new book titled All You Need Is Courage. Let's get into John and Yoko a little bit. The opening chapter. It ends with, quote, I was content and challenged by John Paul Jones. Derek Taylor was honest and straight with me. I had commenced my journey down the yellow brick road to Oz. In the background lay the wizard who would make things happen. The silent shadow of John Lennon loomed large. You describe a literal shiver when John and Yoko walk in. The way you describe them, almost like they shift the energy of the room. Is that intentional?
I was recording Los Angeles in 1973 when I walked into a bathroom and Harry Nilsson was in the bathroom snorting coke. Harry Nilsson then invited me back to Studio A. I was in Studio B doing my album. And for 2 hours, I worked with Harry Nilsson, having the most blissful time of my life. He was asking me about bass sounds and whether I thought the volumes were right. He was mixing Son of Dracula for the movie. It was just an amazingly normal time, like talking to Eric on his podcast. Then in walked Ringo Starr, 2 hours, 2.5 hours later. He was drunk. He was disheveled. He had a half-full bottle of Jack Daniels in his hand. And he was with Richard Perry, his producer, who was also Nilsson's producer in those days, doing Nilsson Schmilsson. Eric, the room changed when Ringo walked in. I became invisible. Nilsson completely ignored me. Everybody ignored me. I go up from the chair next to Harry and I went to sit in the back of the room. I sat there as the three of them talked about the parking lot at RCA, passing the bottle around, snorting coke, the three of them. And I became invisible because there was a Beatle in the room. I then excused myself and left and went back to went back to work on my song Jack and Jill. I believe that when Johnny Yoko entered the room, fame has an incredible effect on us. So if you think about how famous John Lennon was in 1968, just in the same area as him would have an effect on most everyone. Maybe not everyone, but most everyone. And that's why they liked being together so much, the four of them. When they had dinner in Abbey Road, it was just the four of them. Even Mal Evans wasn't at the table. It was just the four of them. And I remember reading about Eric Clapton saying that he was thought of as being God in England. In fact, they described him as God back in the period when he was the guitar player of note. And he said, wherever I went, I was like the king. I was loved. But when I went places with George Harrison, I became invisible because George Harrison was a Beatle. So that's why I made John have that effect. But as the book progresses, I start to go there for dinner to John and Yoko's. I start to see a different side of Yoko. John comes in the studio when I'm recording because he really wants to produce the one cover song I do, which is the Dylan song, Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. He produces it. John Paul Jones sits there quietly. He's the master of everything. And he was the reason that as it says in the book, he controlled the Beatles until Rubber Soul, and that's when Paul McCartney started driving the bus through Revolver, through Pepper, and into Abbey Road, because John had given up the reins. He was tired. It was enough already. 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 366 days in a leap year. They never, ever stopped. I just wanted to say that I wrote about John, Paul, George. I didn't write about Ringo because I never had a relationship with Ringo. I just tried to make it about, I read biographies about them. I did my research, and so it's as honest as I could have been.
Listen to the full episode wherever you get your favorite podcasts.